Chosen one, this is not a coincidence. The moment you found this message was not random, and it was not driven by curiosity alone. There is a deeper reason you are here right now. What you are about to hear carries a weight that goes beyond ordinary advice. It is a warning, one that comes from a place of divine awareness, where what is hidden from you is already fully seen. God, in His mercy, does not wait until damage is done to speak. He intervenes early, often in ways that feel subtle at first, but carry undeniable urgency in the spirit. You may have sensed it already, the slight unease, the quiet disruption in your peace, the feeling that something is not entirely right, even if you cannot explain why. That is not fear. That is discernment beginning to rise. This message is not meant to shame you or accuse you, it is meant to protect you. Not every connection that enters your life is sent to build you, and not every feeling that seems right is aligned with your purpose. Sometimes, what feels comforting in the moment can slowly pull you away from clarity, weaken your focus, and distance you from the path you were meant to walk. Heaven sees what you cannot yet see. While you may only see the present, what feels good, what feels familiar, God sees the direction it leads, the outcome it carries, and the version of you that could be affected if nothing changes. And because He cares about your destiny, He chooses to speak now, before confusion turns into consequence. So take this moment seriously. Pause, listen, and allow your spirit to recognize what your emotions may still be trying to justify. This is not interruption without purpose. This is protection in its earliest form. Not every relationship that enters your life is a blessing, and not every connection is aligned with your purpose. This is one of the most important truths to understand, yet it is often the most overlooked. Many people assume that if something feels natural, comfortable, or emotionally fulfilling, it must be right. But feelings, no matter how strong, are not always reliable indicators of truth. There are relationships that are sent to build you, strengthen you, and walk with you toward your destiny. But there are also relationships that arrive quietly, without obvious warning, carrying the potential to distract, delay, and slowly weaken your spiritual clarity. These connections rarely appear harmful at the beginning. In fact, they often feel familiar, exciting, and even reassuring. That is what makes them dangerous. A relationship does not need to be openly toxic to be harmful. It does not need to be filled with conflict or obvious wrongdoing to pull you off course. Some of the most damaging connections are subtle. They do not attack your faith directly. Instead, they make it less central. They do not force you to abandon your discipline. They simply make it easier to compromise. Over time, what once felt like a small shift becomes a significant distance from where you were meant to be. You may find yourself justifying the connection, focusing on the good moments, the emotional comfort, or the sense of companionship it brings. But underneath that surface, something deeper may be happening. Your focus may be shifting, your clarity may be fading, the voice of purpose within you may be growing quieter. These changes are often gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, but their impact becomes clear over time. It is important to understand that relationships are powerful. They influence how you think, how you feel, and the decisions you make. They shape your direction, sometimes without you even realizing it. This is why not every connection should be maintained, no matter how good it feels in the moment. What matters is not just how a relationship begins, but where it is leading you. A healthy, aligned relationship will strengthen your sense of purpose, not weaken it. It will bring clarity, not confusion. It will support your growth, not quietly slow it down. When a connection consistently pulls you away from who you are meant to become, it is not something to ignore, it is something to recognize. Understanding this truth requires honesty with yourself. It requires you to look beyond emotions and examine the deeper impact a relationship is having on your life. Because in the end, not every relationship is meant to stay, and not every connection is meant to guide you forward. The most dangerous relationships are not the ones that are obviously wrong. They are not the ones filled with chaos, conflict, or clear signs of harm. Those are easier to recognize, easier to question, and often easier to walk away from. The relationships that truly place you at risk are the ones that feel almost right, close enough to keep you attached, but subtly misaligned in ways that are not immediately visible. These are the connections that do not raise alarms at the beginning. They feel natural, comfortable, even meaningful. There is chemistry, conversation flows easily, and a sense of familiarity develops quickly. Nothing seems clearly wrong, and that is exactly what makes them so deceptive. Because when something feels almost right, your mind begins to fill in the gaps, convincing you that it must be right. But misalignment does not always announce itself loudly. It often operates quietly, beneath the surface. A relationship can appear healthy on the outside, while slowly creating internal tension within you. You may not feel immediate pain, but you begin to notice subtle shifts. Your clarity is not as sharp, your focus is not as strong, your inner peace is not as steady as it once was. These are not coincidences. They are signals. What makes these relationships particularly dangerous is their ability to keep you in a state of confusion. You are not fully at peace, but you are not in obvious distress either. You are not completely fulfilled, but you are not completely dissatisfied. This in-between state creates hesitation. It keeps you questioning your own discernment, wondering if you are overthinking or if you are expecting too much. And in that hesitation, time passes, attachment grows, and stepping away becomes more difficult. These connections rarely demand that you abandon your values outright. Instead, they slowly soften them. What once felt important becomes negotiable. What once required discipline becomes optional. You begin to adjust, not because you consciously choose to compromise, but because the relationship gradually normalizes a lower standard. Over time, you may not even recognize how much has changed. Another reason these relationships are so dangerous is because they often come with genuine positive elements. There are moments of joy, laughter, and connection that feel real. And because those moments exist, it becomes easier to justify staying. You focus on the good, hoping it outweighs what feels uncertain. But the presence of good moments does not guarantee the presence of alignment. Misalignment is not always about what is wrong in a visible sense. It is about direction. A relationship can feel emotionally satisfying in the present while leading you away from where you are meant to go. And because the shift is gradual, you may not notice the distance until it has already grown. Discernment requires you to look beyond how something feels and examine what it is producing in your life over time. Does this connection strengthen your clarity or weaken it? Does it bring consistency to your inner peace or disrupt it? Does it move you forward or quietly hold you in place? These are the questions that reveal truth. The reality is, almost right is not right enough when it comes to your future. Close alignment is still misalignment. And the longer you remain in something that is not fully aligned, the more it shapes you in ways you may not intend. Recognizing this is not about fear, it is about wisdom. Because what seems small and uncertain now can become significant and difficult to undo later. One of the clearest ways to recognize that something is not aligned is through the subtle but persistent loss of peace within you. This is not always loud or dramatic. In fact, it is often quiet, almost easy to ignore if you are not paying attention. But over time, it becomes undeniable. You may find yourself feeling unsettled without a clear reason, carrying a sense of inner tension that does not fully go away. Even in moments that should feel calm, something feels slightly off. This loss of peace is often accompanied by confusion. Your thoughts may feel divided. One part of you tries to justify the relationship, focusing on the good, the comfort, and the connection. Another part of you keeps questioning, sensing that something is not right. This internal conflict creates mental and emotional exhaustion. You go back and forth, trying to find clarity, but the more you think, the more uncertain you feel. Confusion is not a random experience. It is often a signal that there are competing influences in your life. When something is truly aligned, it tends to bring clarity, even if the situation is not perfect. But when alignment is missing, your mind struggles to reconcile what you feel with what your spirit senses. That tension is not meant to be ignored. It is meant to be understood. Another sign is the gradual draining of your spiritual energy. You may notice that the things that once felt natural, such as prayer, reflection, or maintaining discipline, begin to feel more difficult. Not because you suddenly lost your commitment, but because your focus has been divided. Your attention is pulled in different directions, and as a result, your connection to what grounds you begins to weaken. At the same time, the relationship may still provide emotional satisfaction. You may feel seen, understood, or valued in certain ways, and that makes it even harder to recognize the imbalance. Because while one part of you feels fulfilled, another part feels depleted. This creates a quiet contradiction. You are not alone, yet you feel internally restless. You are connected, yet something within you feels disconnected. There may also be a noticeable shift in your priorities. Things that once held importance begin to feel less urgent. Boundaries that once felt clear start to blur. You may find yourself compromising in small ways, telling yourself it is not a big deal. But these small compromises accumulate. Over time, they reshape your habits, your mindset, and your sense of direction. Another warning sign is the subtle normalization of discomfort. At first, you may recognize that something feels off. But instead of addressing it, you begin to adapt to it. What once felt like a concern becomes something you tolerate, and what you tolerate long enough eventually starts to feel normal, even if it is not healthy. You may also experience a loss of clarity about your future. Decisions that once felt certain now feel complicated. Your sense of direction becomes less defined. It is not that your purpose has disappeared, but that your ability to see it clearly has been affected. This often happens when something in your life is pulling you in a direction that does not fully align with where you are meant to go. It is important to understand that these signs rarely appear all at once. They develop gradually, which is why they are often dismissed. You may tell yourself that you are just overthinking, that you need to give it more time, or that every relationship has its challenges. While those thoughts may seem reasonable, they can also become a way of avoiding what your intuition is already trying to reveal. Peace is not just a feeling, it is an indicator. When peace is consistently present, it creates stability, even in uncertainty. But when peace is repeatedly disrupted, it is not something to overlook. It is a signal that something deeper needs your attention. Recognizing these warning signs requires honesty and awareness. It requires you to pause and evaluate not just how the relationship makes you feel in certain moments, but what it is producing in your life overall. Because the truth is, what continually brings confusion, drains your energy, and disrupts your inner peace is not something neutral. It is something that deserves to be understood before it shapes your path any further. One of the most critical distinctions you must learn to make is the difference between attraction and assignment. These two can feel incredibly similar at the beginning, which is why so many people confuse them. Both can carry intensity, emotional connection, and a strong sense of pull. Both can make you feel alive, seen, and deeply engaged. But despite how similar they feel, they operate from completely different foundations and lead to very different outcomes. Attraction is emotional by nature. It responds to chemistry, attention, familiarity, and how someone makes you feel in the moment. It is often immediate, powerful, and persuasive. Attraction does not ask for permission from wisdom. It moves quickly, creating a sense of urgency that can feel like certainty. When you are experiencing attraction, your focus tends to center on the present, how comfortable you feel, how understood you feel, how the connection satisfies emotional needs, such as companionship or validation. There is nothing inherently wrong with attraction. It is a natural human experience. But the problem arises when attraction is treated as direction. Just because something feels strong does not mean it is right for your future. Attraction can create momentum without clarity. It can pull you forward before you have had the chance to fully understand where you are going. Assignment, on the other hand, is rooted in purpose, alignment, and long-term impact. It is not driven by urgency, but by discernment. Assignment takes time to reveal itself. It is not only concerned with how something feels now, but with what it produces over time. Instead of asking, "Does this feel good?" assignment asks, "Does this lead me where I am meant to go?" When a connection is aligned with your assignment, it strengthens you rather than divides you. It brings clarity instead of confusion. It supports your growth, your discipline, and your direction. It does not compete with your purpose, it reinforces it. You do not feel like you have to choose between the relationship and your path, because both move in the same direction. Another key difference lies in how each one grows. Attraction tends to accelerate quickly. It feeds on proximity, constant communication, and emotional openness. The faster it grows, the more convincing it feels. Speed can create the illusion of depth, making you believe that something is more solid than it actually is. But what grows too quickly often lacks the foundation needed to last. Assignment grows differently. It develops with patience, stability, and intentionality. It allows time for character to be revealed, for values to be tested, and for alignment to become clear. It may not feel as intense in the beginning, but it is consistent. And consistency is what builds trust and longevity. Attraction often focuses on what you receive, how the other person makes you feel, how they fill emotional gaps, how they meet immediate needs. Assignment focuses on what is built, how the relationship contributes to your growth, how it strengthens your purpose, and how it aligns with the direction of your life. One is centered on emotional satisfaction, while the other is centered on meaningful impact. This is why intensity should never be mistaken for confirmation. A strong emotional pull can feel like a sign, but it is not always a reliable one. Intensity can exist in something that is completely misaligned. Without discernment, it is easy to interpret that intensity as something significant, when in reality it may simply be emotional energy without direction. You must also understand that attraction can exist without assignment, but assignment cannot exist without alignment. If a relationship consistently pulls you away from your clarity, weakens your discipline, or causes you to question your direction, then no matter how strong the attraction is, it is not aligned with your assignment. Learning to distinguish between these two requires honesty and patience. It requires you to slow down, to observe, and to evaluate not just how you feel, but what is actually happening beneath those feelings. Are you becoming more grounded or more distracted? More focused or more divided? More aligned or more uncertain? The truth is, attraction will always appeal to your emotions, but assignment speaks to your future. One draws you in quickly, the other guides you wisely. And if you want to protect your direction, you must be willing to choose alignment over intensity, purpose over impulse, and truth over temporary feeling. One of the deepest reasons this warning feels difficult to accept is because of the difference between how you see and how God sees. As a human being, your perspective is naturally limited to the present moment. You respond to what is in front of you, what feels good, what looks promising, what brings comfort right now. Your decisions are often shaped by immediate experiences, visible behaviors, and emotional responses. But God operates from a completely different vantage point. He sees beyond the present into the full outcome of every path. What you perceive as a beginning, God already sees as a complete journey. Where you see potential, He sees the process required to reach it. Where you see comfort, he sees the cost attached to it. This difference in perspective is why divine warnings can feel uncomfortable or even confusing at first. You may be holding on to what feels meaningful in the moment, while God is trying to protect you from what that same connection could become over time. You might see moments of joy, laughter, and emotional connection. God sees whether those moments are sustainable or if they will eventually turn into exhaustion, compromise, or misdirection. You might see the possibility of growth, imagining what the relationship could become. God sees whether that potential aligns with your purpose or if it will require you to sacrifice parts of yourself that were never meant to be given up. Comfort, in particular, can be misleading. What feels easy and reassuring now can slowly lead to patterns that are difficult to break later. God sees how small decisions today evolve into habits tomorrow, and how those habits shape your character and your future. While you may only be evaluating the present experience, God is evaluating the long-term impact. This is why his guidance often challenges your emotions. It is not because your feelings are invalid, but because they are incomplete. Feelings respond to what is immediate, while wisdom considers what is lasting. God's perspective is rooted in preservation, not just satisfaction. He is not only concerned with how you feel today, but with who you are becoming and where you are ultimately going. There are times when something appears harmless from your point of view, yet carries consequences you cannot yet detect. This is where trust becomes essential. Trusting God means accepting that his understanding goes beyond what you can currently perceive. It means recognizing that just because something feels right does not mean it leads to the right destination. Throughout Scripture, there are repeated examples of God intervening before the full consequences of a situation unfold. He warns before destruction, guides before confusion becomes irreversible, and creates a way out before a path becomes a trap. These interventions are not random, they are intentional acts of protection. When you resist a warning, it is often because your present experience feels more convincing than an unseen future. But the truth is, the future carries weight that the present cannot fully reveal. What seems small now can grow into something significant later. What feels manageable now can become overwhelming over time. Understanding this difference in perspective helps you interpret divine guidance more clearly. It shifts your focus from immediate satisfaction to long-term alignment. It allows you to see that discomfort in the moment may actually be protection in disguise. Ultimately, this is an invitation to trust a higher view, to accept that you do not have to see everything to make a wise decision, to believe that when guidance challenges your emotions, it is not meant to confuse you, but to lead you toward a future that is more stable, more aligned, and more true to who you are meant to become. It is important to understand this clearly. This warning is not a punishment, and it is not a rejection. It is protection. It does not come from anger, but from care. It is not meant to take something away from you, but to preserve something within you that is far more valuable than what you may be holding on to right now. When emotions are involved, it is easy to misunderstand this moment. Being told to step back can feel like loss. It can feel like something meaningful is being denied to you. But that perspective only focuses on what is visible. It does not consider what is unseen, the consequences you are being protected from, the direction you are being kept from drifting into. A warning is a sign of involvement. It means you are not being ignored. It means your life still matters, your path still matters, and your future is still being guarded. If there were no care, there would be no correction. If there were no purpose attached to your life, there would be no need for guidance. The presence of a warning is evidence that you are still being led. You are not being told to let go because you are undeserving of love or connection. You are being guided because not every connection aligns with where you are going. What feels right emotionally can still be wrong directionally, and sometimes Protecting your future requires releasing what feels comfortable in the present. Protection often feels uncomfortable because it challenges attachment. It asks you to trust beyond what you can fully see. But just because something feels difficult does not mean it is wrong. Sometimes what is hardest to release is exactly what needs to be released to keep you on the right path. This is not loss, it is alignment. It is not rejection, it is redirection. And in that redirection, there is care, intention, and a deeper purpose that goes beyond what you can feel right now. One of the most deceptive aspects of ignoring a warning is that the consequences rarely appear immediately. There is no sudden collapse, no instant sign that something has gone wrong. Instead, the change begins quietly, almost unnoticeably, which is why it is so easy to dismiss at first. You may tell yourself that everything is still fine, that nothing has truly changed, and that you still have control over the situation. But the shift begins in small ways. Your focus starts to weaken. The clarity you once had becomes less sharp. Decisions that used to feel certain now feel more complicated. You may begin to spend less time in reflection, less time in what once grounded you, and more time caught up in the emotional rhythm of the relationship. None of this feels dramatic in the moment, but it marks the beginning of a deeper drift. Over time, what was once occasional becomes consistent. Small compromises turn into habits. Boundaries that once felt firm begin to soften. You start to justify things you would have once questioned. Not because you intend to change your values, but because the environment you are in slowly reshapes what feels acceptable. This is how misalignment works. It does not force you off course all at once. It gradually leads you there. As this process continues, your sensitivity decreases. The inner signals that once alerted you begin to grow quieter. What once felt uncomfortable becomes something you tolerate, and eventually, something you accept. This normalization is dangerous because it makes it harder to recognize how far you have drifted from where you started. At the same time, your sense of purpose may begin to feel distant. It is not that it disappears, but it no longer feels as clear or as urgent. You may feel stuck, uncertain, or disconnected from the direction you once had. This often leads to frustration, but the root cause is not always obvious. It is the result of a series of small decisions that slowly pulled you away from alignment. The most difficult part is that by the time the impact becomes fully visible, the attachment is already strong. What could have been addressed early now feels complicated to undo. The longer you stay, the more you invest emotionally, and the harder it becomes to step back. What once required a simple decision now requires significant effort and courage. This is why warnings matter. They are not meant to create fear, but to prevent this slow and often unnoticed decline. Ignoring them does not lead to immediate failure, but it opens the door to gradual misdirection, and over time, that misdirection can take you far from where you intended to be. Understanding this process brings clarity. It shows that the issue is not just about one decision, but about the direction that decision creates. Because in the end, it is not the sudden choices that shape your path the most. It is the small, repeated ones that quietly determine where you arrive. This is the moment where the real decision is made, not in what you feel, but in what you choose. Because when everything becomes clear, you are left with two paths: to follow your emotions or to walk in obedience. And the truth is, these two will not always agree. Your emotions will tell you to hold on. They will remind you of the connection, the comfort, the moments that felt real and meaningful. They will question why you should let go of something that does not seem completely wrong. Emotions speak in the language of now. They seek relief, closeness, and certainty in the present moment. But obedience speaks differently. It does not always feel comfortable. It does not always make immediate sense. It asks you to trust beyond what you can see, to choose alignment even when your heart feels resistant. Obedience is not about denying your feelings. It is about refusing to let them lead when they are not aligned with truth. This is where many people struggle, not because they lack awareness, but because obedience requires sacrifice. Letting go of something you have become attached to is not easy. It challenges your emotions, stretches your faith, and forces you to step into uncertainty. But just because something is difficult does not mean it is wrong. There is a deeper promise within obedience. It may wound your emotions temporarily, but it protects your future permanently. It may feel like loss in the moment, but it creates space for something greater that you cannot yet see. What you release now in obedience will not leave you empty. It will position you for something more aligned, more stable, and more true. You must decide what matters more, temporary comfort or lasting direction. Because holding on may feel easier now, but it can cost you clarity, peace, and purpose over time. While stepping back may feel painful now, it preserves what truly matters. This is the turning point, not where everything feels clear, but where you choose what to follow. And in that choice, your path is shaped not by what you feel, but by what you are willing to trust. As you come to the end of this message, take a moment to reflect on what has been revealed to you. This is not just information, it is an invitation. An invitation to choose clarity over confusion, alignment over attachment, and purpose over temporary comfort. You were not brought this far in your journey to be led off course by something that only feels right for a moment, but leads in the wrong direction over time. You are not losing anything by stepping back. You are being preserved. Preserved for a future that is more stable, more aligned, and more meaningful than what you can currently see. What is meant for you will never require you to abandon your peace, your clarity, or your direction. It will not divide you internally or leave you in constant uncertainty. What is truly aligned will strengthen you, not weaken you. So release what you need to release, not in fear, but in trust. Trust that what is leaving is making space for what is better. Trust that what feels difficult now will make sense later. Trust that you are being guided, even when the path feels unclear. You are not alone in this decision. There is a greater wisdom at work, leading you step by step toward where you are meant to be. Let this be your moment of realignment. A moment where you choose not based on emotion alone, but on truth, discernment, and direction. A moment where you trust that your future is worth protecting, even if it requires letting go of something that once felt important. Now, take a deep breath and center yourself. God, I come before you with an open heart, ready to listen and willing to trust. You see what I cannot see, and you understand what I do not yet fully understand. Give me clarity where there is confusion. Give me strength where there is hesitation. Help me to recognize what is aligned and what is not, even when my emotions try to tell me otherwise. If there is anything in my life that is pulling me away from my purpose, give me the courage to release it. Break every attachment that is not meant to remain. Restore my peace, renew my focus, and guide my steps with wisdom. Help me to trust that what you are doing is for my good, even when it feels difficult in the moment. Fill me with discernment, so that I do not mistake feelings for direction. Strengthen my heart so that I can choose what is right over what is easy. Lead me into relationships that build me, support me, and align with the path you have set before me. I surrender my choices, my emotions, and my future into your hands. I trust you to guide me, protect me, and position me for what is truly meant for me. Amen.